Health Science 100 with Professor Woods.
Welcome back to Chapter 2, Access to Health, Promoting and Preserving Psychological Health. What are our learning outcomes for today? We're going to define the 4 psychological traits of psychologically healthy people. We're going to discuss self-efficacy and self-esteem, to me, two of the most important parts of health. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence, personality, maturity, and happiness, and how these are important for psychological well-being. We're going to talk about psychological disorders, including mood disorders, anxiety disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorders, post-traumatic stress, personality disorders. We're going to talk about each of these, touch on each of these. If you are suffering from one of these, or you know of some person that is suffering from one of these psychological disorders, please get them help. The sooner you can get help for yourself or others, the quicker they can recover, the quicker they can manage that psychological disorder, the quicker they can live a healthier life. And then we're going to discuss some risk factors and warning signs, particularly for suicide, which is a huge risk for young people. We need to discuss suicide risk, identify people that are at risk of self-harm, and get them help. This is a very serious problem, and too often there's inaction. Too often we look and we see people suffering psychologically, and we think, oh, they'll be okay. But they are often not okay, and they will be much better if they get the help they need. File a CARES report online with the community college. Ask that person, do they need help? Get them help. Get them in touch with a counselor. There are resources here at the school that can help anybody. If you notice somebody suffering, don't hesitate. Get them help today. So what do we need? Back in the 60s, Maslow put together this hierarchy of needs. It's really important to understand that we have basic needs. We have basic needs for survival, things like food and water, but also sleep. We also need to be able to sleep. We need to exercise. We need to be able to move. We need to have sexual expression. All of these things are basic survival needs. Without them, human beings will struggle. We also have security needs. We need shelter, we need safety, we need protection. We need to feel that we're in a safe environment. That's super important. Now, above that, there are some social needs. We need to feel belonging. The more social interactions we have, the healthier we will be. Human beings have a need for affection and acceptance in peer groups. Developing those connections is part of college life. We also have need for self-esteem, for self-respect, and we can get that through having respect for others and finding groups of people that have respect for us, and socializing with those groups. And self-actualization or spirituality is very important. Sometimes that's expressed through creativity, sometimes that's expressed through life goals, sometimes that's expressed through social interactions, but really it's all about fulfilling your potential. What is it that you want to do in the next 1,000 days, and how are you going to get there? And taking one small step today towards that goal, and following that up every single day until you've achieved the goals that you set yourself. You can do amazing things, one step at a time. In terms of psychological health, there are 4 main factors for psychological health. There's mental aspects. The mental aspects of psychological health, that's thinking straight. Okay? If we're unable to think straight because we're suffering from a disease that's affecting our brain's function, or we're on drugs, or we're drinking alcohol and we can't think straight, that's going to cause a huge problem psychologically. Emotional health, managing our feelings. not letting feelings consume us. Sometimes anger consumes people. It's okay to be angry, but when anger is consuming us and having negative, detrimental effects on our life and our interactions socially, that's a problem. And we want to be able to express our emotions in safe environments where we won't cause ourselves harm or harm to anybody else. Social, again, back to this idea that the more social interactions, the more people that we interact with on a daily basis, the better. It's always more healthy. So don't be a loner. Get out there, talk to people, even if it's small, minor, little interactions. Hey, how you doing? How's your day? What are you doing there? Just little pieces of interactions, being brave enough to put yourself out there. People love social interactions. They're going to really enjoy getting to know you. And then the spiritual dimensions of one's life. What are those goals that we're shooting for? All of these aspects get together to give us strength and resilience. If you've got a lot of social interactions, you've got people you can rely on, people that can help you when you're in a difficult situation. If you've learned to manage your emotions, you can be resilient and you can cope with something that might be causing you problems for a short term. If your brain is functioning well, you can think clearly and think your way around problems to solutions. And then having a goal, having a spiritual dimension to your health can help you be resilient and shrug off the difficulties of today because you have that long-term goal ahead of you. So how are people doing? This slide shows us that psychological health is really dynamic. At any point in time, people are somewhere in a continuum from excelling, feeling wonderful, through crisis. And that happens to everybody. Some days we're excelling and thriving, we're feeling great. Other days we're just surviving, and there are days where everybody is struggling. If somebody is in crisis, get them help. Don't leave somebody in crisis. Get them help straight away. But you can see that up to 14% of people are constantly in a state of crisis. They're people that need your help. They need professional help. Make sure that they get that. So here we'll take a look at some characteristics of psychologically healthy people and psychologically unhealthy people. Unhealthy people, and these are some warning signs that I'd like you to be aware of. Psychologically unhealthy people tend to have a lack of zest for life. There's no goal. They don't have something they want to do tomorrow. They're not looking forward to things. They may laugh, but usually they laugh at others, not with friends. Sometimes they're very serious. Oftentimes, can be down, depressed. These are signs that somebody needs help. They may view life as very challenging, very difficult to get through. And oftentimes this goes with illness or an inability to go to class, things like that. On the other hand, psychologically healthy people usually have this zest for life. They've got a healthy spiritual life. They're intellectually engaged. They're mindful. They can take a moment for themselves. They have high energy. They're very resilient, and bouncing off of life's challenges, focused often. Typically have a very realistic point of view about themselves, where they fit in the world, and can adapt to change rapidly. So people with strong social support and healthy relationships, particularly connections to family and friends are often in that psychologically healthy category. So what are some things that influence our psychological health? We touched on them already a little bit, but family support is super important. Managing family interactions can be really helpful to psychological health. Social support, those interactions with friends and community, really important. Community support, really helpful. Having self-efficacy, believing in yourself, and self-esteem, believing that you can do things. Self-efficacy and self-esteem are two of the most important skills you can develop at college. Work on those daily. Look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you're a fantastic person, because you are. Personality is modifiable, and it will change throughout life. So when you're not stuck with who you are now, you can modify it little by little. I used to be exceptionally shy. You don't need to be. You can grow out of different personality traits through small experiences, daily experiences, and small daily efforts. Just one step at a time. Things we can't change: age, gender, genetics, very difficult to change. But these are by no means the largest influences on your life. Your own habits, your own daily choices are the most important influences in your life. Okay, emotional health, we talked about this. It refers to how we feel. Emotional healthy people respond appropriately to upsetting events. Sometimes you see inappropriate emotional responses. That's typical of people who are not emotionally or psychologically healthy. Emotional health influences all aspects of our life. Sometimes emotional health can deteriorate, and sometimes we see that with stress. Sometimes we see that with people who are in abusive relationships. If you are in an abusive relationship and your emotional health is suffering, get out, change. Anxiety, loneliness, financial upheavals can all influence our emotional health. And death or injury can certainly impact our emotional health and dramatically negatively affect our emotional health. When that happens, mental illnesses can occur, and they're more frequent than people realize. So be aware that stress, abusive relationships, anxiety, loneliness, financial upheavals, deaths in the family, injuries in the family, injury to yourself, these are all things that can trigger mental illness. And these are all things that you should be aware of and get help for when they occur. When college students are asked about their concerns, many of them voice that they feel overwhelmed. Sometimes that overwhelming feeling causes exhaustion, and that's not physical exhaustion, that's a feeling of mental, emotional exhaustion. And sometimes that shows up with anxiety, sometimes that shows up with depression. 40% of students describe depressive feelings. And unfortunately, a large number of people are consider suicide and consider self-harm. Of those people, around 7% might intentionally injure themselves. And there's a small percentage of people, 1 to 2%, that may actually attempt suicide. This is a huge, huge problem, and it's one that I want you to be very aware of, both for yourself and for your friends. Take action when you see someone is suffering from anxiety or depression. These are the first signs, these are the warning signs that someone might be considering self-harm. Get them help early. The earlier you can get them help, the earlier they can get treatment, and the greater the chance that that person can avoid any negative outcomes. It's all about maintaining health, improving health, making sure your friends, your family, and yourself are safe.